March 14, 2026, 6:42 a.m. Eastern Time. Military Ocean Terminal, Sunny Point, North Carolina. A commercial satellite from Planet Labs captures a series of high-resolution images over the largest military ammunition port on the Atlantic coast. The images show standard 40-foot intermodal shipping containers, the same steel boxes that carry sneakers, electronics, and frozen chicken across every ocean on Earth, being loaded onto a gray-hulled vessel operated by Military Sealift Command. Except these containers are different. Each one has been modified with a concealed hydraulic hatch on the top surface. Internal bracing has been reinforced to handle extreme vertical thrust loads, and thermal signatures from an earlier infrared pass suggest active power connections running from the ship's electrical grid into each container. Defense analysts at the Center for Strategic and International Studies identify them within hours. What they're looking at is the Containerized Weapon System, a classified Navy program designed to turn any vessel with a flat deck and a cargo crane into a distributed missile platform. Inside each container, 4 Mark 41 vertical launch cells, each cell loaded with either a Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missile or an SM-6 dual-purpose interceptor. 16 missiles per container, 12 containers on a single ship, 192 rounds of precision firepower, hidden inside what looks like an ordinary cargo vessel. This changes everything. I'm your host at NavyAxis, where we break down the most critical naval operations shaping global power. Today, we're examining a program that could redefine how America projects force across the world's oceans, and why some strategists believe it might be the most dangerous idea the Pentagon has embraced in decades. Because the question isn't whether containerized weapons work. The technology is proven, the launchers function, the missiles fly. The question is, what happens when every cargo ship on Earth becomes a potential warship? To understand why the Pentagon accelerated this program, you need to understand the math problem that kept Navy planners awake throughout the fall of 2025. The United States Navy operates roughly 90 deployable surface combatants, destroyers, cruisers, and littoral combat ships. Those vessels carry a combined total of approximately 9,000 vertical launch cells, the standardized tubes that hold everything from anti-air missiles to land attack cruise missiles to anti-submarine rockets. 9,000 cells sounds like a lot. It isn't. In October 2025, the Navy had 2 carrier strike groups committed to the Western Pacific, maintaining presence near Taiwan and the South China Sea. 2 more strike groups were operating in the Persian Gulf and Arabian Sea, responding to escalating tensions with Iran following the events of the previous summer. A 5th group was rotating through the Mediterranean. 5 carrier strike groups deployed simultaneously. That's nearly 60% of the surface fleet committed to active operations across 3 theaters. The cells were being consumed faster than anyone expected. Houthi drone attacks in the Red Sea had forced Aegis destroyers to expend SM-2 and SM-6 interceptors at an alarming rate. Each engagement burned through missiles that cost between $2 and $4 million apiece, and replacement rounds weren't arriving fast enough. The production line for SM-6 missiles at Raytheon's facility in Tucson, Arizona, produces roughly 150 rounds per year. The Navy was burning through that number every few months. Admiral James Thornton, commander of Naval Surface Forces, reportedly presented the problem to the Joint Chiefs in a classified briefing on November 3, 2025. The slide that caught everyone's attention showed a simple bar chart: projected missile expenditure versus production capacity through 2027. The lines crossed in the wrong direction. The Navy was running out of missiles, not in some theoretical future scenario. Right now, the containerized weapon system had been studied in various forms since 2015. Lockheed Martin had demonstrated a prototype launcher that could fit inside a standard shipping container and fire a long-range anti-ship missile. The concept was straightforward. Take existing missile systems, package them in modular containers, and deploy them on any ship with enough deck space and electrical power. But the program had never moved beyond testing. Peacetime bureaucracy, procurement politics, and a general belief that America's carrier fleet was sufficient had kept it in the concept phase. November 2025 ended that complacency. The acceleration order came directly from the Secretary of Defense on November 19th. The directive was simple: take the containerized weapon system from prototype to operational capability within 120 days. No committee reviews, no environmental impact studies, no multi-year procurement timeline, 120 days. From concept to combat ready, the Navy turned to its most adaptable asset, Military Sea Lift Command. MSC operates a fleet of over 120 vessels, cargo ships, tankers, ocean surveillance ships, submarine tenders. Most are crewed by civilian mariners. Most look indistinguishable from commercial shipping. That was the point. By late December 2025, engineers at Naval Surface Warfare Center Dahlgren had finalized the integration package. Each container was built around a quad-pack Mark 41 launcher module, the same system used aboard every Arleigh Burke-class destroyer and Ticonderoga-class cruiser in the fleet. The external dimensions matched a standard 40-foot high cube container exactly. Length, 40 feet. Width, 8 feet. Height, 9 feet 6 inches. From the outside, it looked like any other steel box. Gray paint, corrugation ridges, standard corner castings. Even the ISO container identification codes were authentic, registered through shell companies to avoid tracking. Inside was a different story. The top panel was a hydraulic clamshell hatch that could open in under 4 seconds. The launcher cells were mounted vertically on a reinforced steel frame, surrounded by blast-resistant lining to protect adjacent containers during launch. Each container carried its own power distribution unit, connected to the host ship's electrical system through a standard NATO STANAG shore power connector. The fire control system was the most elegant piece. Rather than installing a full Aegis combat system, which would require months of integration and a crew of hundreds, the engineers developed a compact tactical data link terminal that connected each container to the Navy's Cooperative Engagement Capability Network. Targeting data could come from an Aegis destroyer hundreds of miles away, an E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft, or even an F-35 operating in sensor mode. The container didn't need its own radar. It didn't need its own fire control officers. It just needed a data link and a launch command. Remote fire, distributed lethality, a missile magazine that looks like a shipment of refrigerators. The first test launch occurred on January 8, 2026 from the deck of USNS Lewis, a Spearhead-class expeditionary fast transport operating in the Atlantic Test Range off the coast of Virginia. At 2:14 p.m., the hydraulic hatch on container Alpha 1 opened. 3.7 seconds later, a Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missile ignited its solid rocket booster and climbed vertically from the container. The booster burned for 12 seconds, accelerating the missile to cruise speed, then separated. The missile's Williams International F-415 turbofan engine engaged, and the weapon leveled off at an altitude of 100 feet, skimming over the Atlantic at 550 miles per hour. It struck a decommissioned vessel 87 miles downrange 14 minutes later. Direct hit amidships. The warhead, a 1,000-pound class unitary penetrator, punched through the hull and detonated inside the engine room. The target ship broke apart within minutes. The containerized weapon system worked. Rear Admiral Patricia Navarro, who oversaw the test from the Range Control Center at Wallops Island, reportedly described the result in 3 words: "Program is validated." 2 weeks later, a second test demonstrated the SM-6 capability. This launch was more complex. The SM-6 is a dual-purpose missile that can engage both air targets and surface ships. The targeting data for this shot came from an E-2D Hawkeye flying at 25,000 feet, 140 miles from the launch vessel. The SM-6 received mid-course guidance through the Cooperative Engagement Capability Link and successfully intercepted a BQM-177A subsonic target drone at a range of 130 nautical miles. A cargo ship had just performed fleet air defense. If you're finding this breakdown valuable, subscribe to NavyAxis. We go deeper on naval strategy than anyone else on this platform. By February 2026, Military Sea Lift Command had begun deploying the system operationally. The first vessel to carry containerized weapons on a real-world mission was the USNS Montford Point, a mobile landing platform with a massive flat deck originally designed for ship-to-shore logistics. Montford Point departed Norfolk on February 12th with 16 modified containers secured to her deck alongside regular cargo. To any observer, including satellites operated by Russia, China, and Iran, she looked like she was on a routine logistics run to the Mediterranean. She was carrying 256 missiles, more firepower than a Ticonderoga-class cruiser. The ship transited the Atlantic at 18 knots, passed through the Strait of Gibraltar on February 19th, and took up a position in the eastern Mediterranean. From that location, her Tomahawk missiles could reach targets in Syria, Lebanon, western Iran, and most of North Africa. A logistics ship, sitting quietly at sea, looking like every other gray hull in the commercial shipping lanes, carrying enough cruise missiles to reshape the battlefield in a regional conflict. The strategic logic was compelling. Admiral Thornton laid it out in a briefing to the Senate Armed Services Committee on February 27. A carrier strike group broadcasts intent. When the USS Eisenhower transits the Suez Canal, every adversary with a satellite knows exactly what's coming and where it's going. The containerized weapon system inverts that dynamic. We can surge firepower to any theater, on any vessel, without revealing our hand. The numbers supported his argument. A single Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carries 96 Mark 41 cells. It costs approximately $2.2 billion. It takes 4 years to build, and it requires a crew of 330 sailors to operate. 12 containerized launcher modules carry 192 cells. They cost roughly $40 million total. They can be manufactured in weeks, and they require a technical team of just 8 personnel to operate. The cost ratio was staggering. For the price of one destroyer, the Navy could equip 50 ships with containerized weapons. Distributed lethality. The concept that every ship is a warship. The concept that the enemy can never know which cargo vessel is carrying missiles and which one is carrying soybeans. But not everyone in the Pentagon was celebrating. The opposition came from an unexpected direction, the Office of the Secretary of Defense's Policy Division, and specifically from a team of international lawyers who had been studying the implications since December. Their concern was rooted in a principle that has governed naval warfare since the Hague Conventions of 1907, the distinction between civilian and military vessels. International humanitarian law requires that warships be clearly identifiable. They must fly a naval ensign. They must be commanded by a commissioned officer. They must be listed in a nation's naval registry. These requirements exist for a specific reason, to protect civilian shipping from being targeted in wartime. The containerized weapon system deliberately violates every one of these principles. The entire point of the program is that the vessel carrying the weapons is indistinguishable from a civilian ship. It flies a civilian flag. It operates under a civilian call sign. Its crew appears to be civilian mariners. The legal team's memo, which was later described by sources familiar with its contents, posed a stark question. If the United States hides weapons aboard civilian pattern vessels, what legal or moral basis does it have to object when an adversary attacks civilian shipping? The implications were enormous. Approximately 90% of global trade moves by sea. 50,000 merchant vessels are at sea at any given time. The entire global economy depends on the assumption that cargo ships are civilian objects, protected from military attack. If nations begin hiding missiles inside shipping containers, that assumption collapses. China raised the issue through diplomatic channels almost immediately. On March 2, 2026, China's ambassador to the United Nations delivered a formal protest to the Security Council, calling the containerized weapon system a reckless escalation that threatens the safety of international maritime commerce. Beijing argued that the program gave China the legal right to inspect, or even interdict, any vessel suspected of carrying concealed weapons in waters near Chinese territory. Russia echoed the complaint days later, warning that any unidentified vessel approaching Russian naval facilities could be treated as hostile. Iran went further. On March 8th, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy announced that it would begin boarding and inspecting all commercial vessels transiting the Strait of Hormuz to search for concealed weapons systems. 3 cargo ships were stopped within the first 48 hours. 2 were boarded. One, a Danish-flagged container ship carrying auto parts, was held for 16 hours while IRGC sailors opened and inspected every container on the upper deck. Global shipping insurance rates for the Persian Gulf spiked by 34% overnight. The paradox was brutal. The containerized weapon system was designed to project power quietly, without provocation. Instead, its mere existence was provoking exactly the kind of confrontation it was supposed to prevent. Inside the Pentagon, the debate fractured along institutional lines. The Navy saw distributed lethality as the future of maritime warfare, a way to multiply firepower without building more ships. The Army and Air Force were largely indifferent. The State Department was alarmed, and the intelligence community warned that China was already developing its own version, because that was the other problem. The technology wasn't complicated. Any nation with access to shipping containers and cruise missiles could build the same system, and some already were. Satellite imagery from March 2026 showed activity at Dalian shipyard in northeastern China, consistent with container modification. Open-source intelligence analysts identified reinforced containers being loaded onto Type 901 fast combat support ships, the logistics vessels that supply China's carrier battle groups. China wasn't just protesting the program. China was copying it. Russia's Caliber cruise missile had been designed from the beginning for containerized launch. The Club K system, marketed by Russian defense export companies since 2010, packages 4 Caliber missiles in a standard shipping container with a pop-up launcher. Russia had never deployed the system operationally. Now, according to defense intelligence assessments, production had resumed at Novator Design Bureau in Yekaterinburg. The proliferation nightmare was unfolding in real time. A technology designed to give the United States an asymmetric advantage was becoming a global commodity. And the strategic calculus grew darker. If any nation can hide cruise missiles inside shipping containers, then any container ship becomes a potential threat. Port security, which currently focuses on contraband and immigration, would need to screen for weapon systems. Maritime patrol aircraft would need to investigate every commercial vessel. Naval commanders would face impossible rules of engagement decisions. Is that approaching cargo ship carrying consumer goods or anti-ship missiles? The civilian-military distinction that has protected merchant shipping for over a century was eroding. March 14, 2026. The satellite images from Sunny Point leaked to defense journalists. Within hours, the story is on every major news network. The Pentagon refuses to confirm or deny the program's existence, which is itself confirmation. Markets react. Shipping stocks drop. Insurance premiums spike. The Baltic Dry Index, the benchmark for global shipping costs, jumps 11% in 2 days. Meanwhile, in the Western Pacific, something else is happening. The USNS Cesar Chavez, a Lewis and Clark-class dry cargo ship, departs Guam on March 16th. Her deck is loaded with shipping containers. Some contain food, medical supplies, and spare parts for 7th Fleet operations. Others, according to intelligence later compiled by Japanese maritime surveillance, contain Mark 41 launcher modules loaded with Tomahawk Block 5 and SM-6 missiles. Cesar Chavez takes up a position in the Philippine Sea, roughly 400 miles east of Taiwan. From that location, her Tomahawks can reach Chinese military installations on the mainland coast. Her SM-6 missiles can provide area air defense for any naval formation operating within cooperative engagement range. A supply ship, sitting in open ocean, quietly carrying more firepower than most nations' entire navies. China's reaction is immediate. On March 18th, a People's Liberation Army Navy Type 055 destroyer, hull number 105, breaks from its patrol route near the Miyako Strait and closes on Cesar Chavez at 28 knots. 2 Z-20 helicopters launch from the destroyer's flight deck to conduct close-range surveillance. The Chinese destroyer takes up a position 3,000 yards off Cesar Chavez's port beam, close enough to read the identification numbers on her containers. For 6 hours, the two ships sail in parallel. The Chinese commander reportedly transmits repeated radio demands for Cesar Chavez to identify the contents of her cargo. The American ship responds with standard maritime protocol: vessel name, registry, destination. Nothing about cargo contents. At 4:47 p.m. local time, the Type 055 activates its Type 346B radar in full tracking mode. This is an aggressive act. Painting another vessel with fire control radar is one step below launching a weapon. Cesar Chavez's 8-person weapons team goes to alert stations inside the modified containers. Launcher hatches remain closed, but power systems spin up. Targeting data flows in through the CEC link from an Arleigh Burke destroyer operating 200 miles to the south. The standoff lasts until 11:30 p.m. when the Chinese destroyer receives orders from Fleet Command and breaks away to the north. No shots fired, no containers opened, but everyone involved understood what had just happened. A logistics ship and a frontline destroyer had faced off in a confrontation that neither side's existing rules of engagement were designed to handle. Comment: container, if you think distributed lethality is the future of naval warfare. The strategic community remains divided. Proponents argue the math is irrefutable. The Navy needs more missile capacity, and containerized weapons provide it faster and cheaper than any alternative. Building a new destroyer takes 4 years and costs over $2 billion. Equipping a cargo ship takes 2 weeks and costs a fraction of that. Rear Admiral Navarro, now heading the program full-time, frames it in terms of survivability. In a conflict with China, America's surface combatants would be priority targets. Every Arleigh Burke destroyed takes 96 launch cells out of the fight. But if missile capacity is distributed across dozens of vessels, supply ships, tankers, even chartered commercial vessels, the enemy can't eliminate American firepower by sinking a few high-value targets. You'd have to sink everything. Critics counter that the logic works both ways. If the United States normalizes hiding weapons on civilian vessels, adversaries will do the same. And the United States, with its massive commercial port infrastructure and its dependence on maritime trade, is more vulnerable to this threat than any other nation. Imagine a Chinese container ship entering the port of Long Beach, California. Standard cargo manifest, standard port inspection. But somewhere in those 10,000 containers stacked on her deck, 4 have been modified. 16 cruise missiles, aimed at Naval Base San Diego, 30 miles to the south. Far-fetched? The technology is identical to what the U.S. Navy is deploying right now. The same launchers, the same containers, the same concealment principle. The precedent cuts both ways. As of early April 2026, the Pentagon has reportedly deployed containerized weapon modules on at least 4 military sealift command vessels operating in the Pacific and Mediterranean. The total number of concealed missile cells at sea is estimated at over 500, roughly equivalent to adding 5 Arleigh Burke destroyers to the fleet overnight. The Navy plans to expand to 12 equipped vessels by the end of 2026, with a combined capacity exceeding 1,500 cells. If fully loaded with Tomahawk missiles, that represents enough firepower to strike over 1,000 targets across multiple theaters simultaneously, all hidden in plain sight, all indistinguishable from the 60,000 commercial vessels moving cargo across the world's oceans every day. The age of distributed lethality has arrived. The question is no longer whether it works. It works. The question is, what happens to the global order when the line between warship and merchant vessel disappears entirely? When any cargo ship could be carrying cruise missiles? When any container could hold a launcher? When the ocean itself becomes the magazine? The rules that have governed naval warfare for over a century were written for a world where warships looked like warships and cargo ships looked like cargo ships. That world is ending, and whatever comes next, the seas will never be the same.